The freedom of religion or freedom of practice is the freedom to pass on these traditions to our children without interference from other people. There is a massive war happening, it's been happening for decades, where one side is mobilized for the war, they have war strategies, they have soldiers on the ground, they are attacking every day, and the other side does not even know the war exists. India has the largest number of target groups in Joshua Project. Indian state has a scheme where, if you are a Muslim or a Christian, you get scholarships from the government of India as minority scholarships, where you get scholarships to even study abroad. Right? So the state is funding the same religions that are actively being funded all over the globe. The Indian state is also funding the same forces. First question we are really going to ask is, who defines religious freedom? Who defines religious freedom? So there are two different views on freedom of religion, and we need to be aware of these two different views. So from the one point of view, from the proselytizing religions, religion is a competitive endeavor. So this is part of the key theological point of Christianity, that religion is a truth claim, and only one of the truth claims is possible to be valid. Either Jesus came, and because of Jesus the entire world is saved, and only if you believe in Jesus you're going to be saved, or you're going to go to heaven. Either this claim is true or this claim is false. So in their point of view, religion is a truth claim, and there are competing truth claims. So there is a competitive marketplace in which it is necessary for them to establish their truth claim, the validity of their truth claim above other truth claims. The other point of view is completely different from this. The view of the native traditions, and this is not only traditions in India, but traditions of the natives all across the world, was that we have some traditions that we got from our ancestors. Everybody has their own traditions, so they are not competing truth claims. There is no competition between these, because everybody has their own tradition, just like there is no competition between the fact that I have my ancestors and you have your ancestors. There is no competition between the fact that I have my tradition and you have your tradition. So the freedom of religion or freedom of practice is the freedom to pass on these traditions to our children without interference from other people. Okay, so it is a completely diametrically opposite point of view. One side is saying that religion is a truth claim. Only one of the truth claims is valid, and it is necessary, and it's a competitive marketplace, and we need to establish our truth over the falsehood of other people. Okay, and the other side is saying everybody has their own tradition. तुम अपना फॉलो करो, मैं अपना फॉलो करूं, क्या प्रॉब्लम है? There is no conflict, because everybody has their own tradition, everybody is free to follow their own tradition. So those are the two counterpoints, and we have to understand this conflict between this counterpoint starts from the very inception of Christianity. So this is the last pagan prefect of Rome. So when the Emperor Constantine adopted Christianity as the state religion, and as the church started to grow in power, they were persecuting the traditional practices of Rome, the pagan traditions of Rome. So the pagan prefect said, "Grant, I beg you, that what in our youth we took over from our fathers, we may in our old age hand to prosperity. The love of established practice is a powerful sentiment. Everyone has his own customs, his own religious practices. The divine mind has assigned to different cities, different religions to be their guardians." So this is very much in line with the native view of religion, native view of traditions, which is saying everybody has their own, there is no conflict between them. You follow yours, I will follow mine. And so when when the Christian conquest of the Americas was happening, many different kinds of native resistance was arising. And so this is one example where in the Pueblo Indians, these are again Native Americans, they passed this resolution where we say, we have met because our most fundamental right of religious liberty is threatened. To pass this religion with hidden and sacred knowledge and its many forms of prayer on to our children is our supreme duty to our ancestors. Right? So again, in this point of view, they are saying that we have our own traditions and our ability to pass this on is religious freedom. And when somebody comes and tries to convert us, they are violating our religious freedom, right? Because they are interfering with our ability to pass on our traditions. Now, what is the other side of it? And again, here I am not making my goal here is to first understand the two sides. I'm not trying to. I want to represent them as accurately as possible. I want to represent the other side as accurately as possible. So this is from the International Mission Board, which is the proselytizing, the evangelizing arm of the Southern Baptists. And so the quote there is, declare his God's glory among the heathen, his wonders among all people. God wants Southern Baptists as a people to mobilize vast resources for reaching all people groups for Jesus Christ. So this is their mission statement. So what they are saying is that it is necessary for us to spread this among the heathens, to save the heathens. So the other people, their religions, their traditions are not valid. In fact, they are satanic. Satan has captured their minds. And we need to free them from Satan, and the way we free them from Satan is to spread the gospel. This is their point of view. We must realize that this is not our mission, it is God's mission. It is a vision that will be fulfilled, for Jesus said in Matthew 24:14, the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a witness to every nation, and then the end will come. So, a lot of times we don't understand why are the missionaries doing this, why are the evangelists doing it. They are doing it because they consider it their religious duty. They consider it their religious duty that their scripture is telling them, their doctrine is telling them that they have to do this. And not only is it necessary for them to do it, it is apocalyptic, meaning all of the Christians are waiting in their graves for Judgment Day. On Judgment Day, they will be bodily lifted from the grave and they will ascend to heaven. This is the belief. So, when will Judgment Day come? Now, this has always been a question right from the beginning of Christianity, and they were thinking it's going to happen very soon. And in fact, there's a lot of apocalyptic even movies that the West produces, Apocalypse Now. They're waiting for judgment. They're constantly waiting for the end of the world so that they will be lifted up to heaven. And so that is, there was a big thing around AD 2000 also. There was this idea that is the time. But from centuries, somebody or the other has been predicting that Judgment Day is about to come now, and we will finally get liberated because they're all rotting in graves. They have to get liberated from there and go to heaven. So then there's the belief system which says that, okay, maybe the once we preach the gospel to the whole world, then the end will come. Therefore, then Judgment Day will come and then we will get to heaven. So this is again one of the driving forces for the gospel mission. The other aspect of that, which is more personal in a way, is that fear is a very key aspect of the spread and the belief in Christianity. I remember I was in a Buddhist temple in Seattle one time, and I was talking to an American woman who had become Buddhist. So I was speaking to her about her experience, and she said, I asked her what was the biggest difference for her. She said the biggest difference was freedom from the terror of hell. Freedom from the terror of hell. What is this terror of hell? And this happens in Islam as well. You believe because you're a Christian, you're going to heaven. But you never really know for sure. Maybe you're not a good enough Christian. Maybe your belief is not strong enough, right? And so every week you're being taught this doctrine of hell. And there is this huge fear that you actually might end up in hell. And the children are terrified of this. I mean, this is something that creates terror in children, because you're going there, they're preaching, they're hellfire and damnation is going to happen. So there's all these graphic details. In fact, there's a big best-selling American book called Taken Away or something. I forget the title. There was a whole series where they were talking about what is hell like. They were describing it in graphic detail. So there is this terror of hell. And this terror of hell is a big force in driving the mission as well, because they are hoping that maybe they don't know for sure if they're going to get saved, but maybe if they are doing this thing, then God will finally be happy at them and they will get saved and they won't go to hell. Right? So that is another motivation. And then finally, if they do that, then every nation will then the end will come, and then Jesus will take them away to heaven. The reason why I'm giving this story is for us. For me, all of this was new, meaning that I never understood this. It took me at least, I said, several years after being in the US, and I was very curious about American society. I was interacting with many different kinds of people. In fact, I remember I was on a date once, and this woman asked me, what brought you to America? And I said, I came here for the anthropology of the natives. So I came here to study the natives. It was kind of a joke, but it was also true, because I really wanted to study that society, because they kept sending people to study us, but we never sent people to study them, and study their society. So in studying it, we have to realize that there are several kinds of asymmetries that happen. One of the asymmetries is the asymmetry of doctrine, right? I've said that there's a different belief systems. One belief system says that everybody has their own tradition. It is good for them, and let everybody follow what they are following. What is the problem? The other belief system says that there is one truth, the rest are false, and it is important that we make everybody believe in this truth, right? So asymmetry of doctrine. So that asymmetry comes from, in the Joshua Project you'll find, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. This is the asymmetry which is driving the mission. So what is the Joshua Project? There was a project before this called the AD 2000 movement. So there was a lot of, they had a lot of belief around this 2000 years after Jesus came, that maybe that was the apocalyptic moment, judgment day will happen. And so they were driving towards saying, okay, 2000 years have passed and we still have not converted the entire world. So we really need to focus on it. So if you I read the documents in the 1990s on this AD 2000 movement, and they were like saying, in fact, their slide deck said, just like Coke is there in every city, in every place, we need to market our mission like Coke is doing its marketing. And we need to have this whole marketing effort that will bring this to the entire world. And this is the biggest multinational on the planet in terms of its marketing effort. They have the Jesus film. I don't know what the current count is, but it's like translated into maybe 800 or 900 languages. So they'll go to some small tribal place. That tribe has never seen a film in their language, but these people have studied the language and dubbed it. And in that film, Jesus is asking them to come to him, right? So imagine the impact, that creates. So this is the biggest multinational marketing effort that dwarfs any multinational corporation on the planet. So this AD 2000 movement, also it's important to remember, a lot of times we in India haven't studied the other side, or we haven't studied Christianity. So this is not the Catholic Church. This is a Protestant movement. Joshua Project and the AD 2000 movement is a Protestant movement. So it's different from the Catholic Church. In fact, I think Pope John Paul complained because these people were so aggressive that they were converting Catholics in South America. And they were saying they're like wolves. They're like wolves preying on our sheep. because they are aggressively converting Catholics to Protestants, and there is a conflict between these two also. So the Protestants believe the Catholic Church is completely corrupt, and those people need to be saved.
Who was going to hell and who was going to heaven?
Yeah. So that there's a constant debate, right? Every Christian sect believes actually that they are the only sect that is also going to heaven. So what happens is,
for all the sects, including Islam.
Yeah, in the Islamic sects also.
All other will go to hell.
Yes. All the other sects. So in fact, we have the laws of exclusivisms. So these are exclusivisms. I call them exclusivisms. And when exclusivism split, each of the splits is also an exclusivism, right? So then they believe that the other side of the split is also going to hell and is not going to get saved. Right, so Mormons have their own belief system, the Catholics have their own, the different Protestant groups, the Presbyterians and the Seventh-day Adventists, and now there is this big movement where you've seen these videos. What is the name of this? You see all these videos where these women are swaying like crazy and something. The charismatic one, but there is another name for it. So there is this whole other section. So there are these different sects, and they have different strategies and different techniques, and oftentimes they are in conflict with each other as well. But the AD 2000 movement actually tried to bridge some of the conflict, at least between the Protestant groups. They said at least the Protestant groups should organize and target, instead of each other, we should target the heathen. We should target those that needed to be converted. And then from AD 2000, and the idea was to plant a church among every people group. This is where, you go to a village in India and you see suddenly a church has cropped up. This is not just happening accidentally because something has happened. This is part of that entire warlike strategy that was set out over 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago. And the idea was that they would go and they would plant a church, and that church would become the seed for converting all the people around. And the co-chairman was Billy Graham. And again, this is a very, very strong and powerful movement that is intricately connected with the American power structure. So it is intricately, the president, I was talking about Southern Baptists, several US presidents have been Southern Baptists, almost every US president, including the Democrats. So this is not some Republican thing. Like for instance, Bill Clinton addressed the Southern Baptist Convention, George Bush addressed the Southern Baptist Convention. So this is a very, very powerful, and in fact some years ago even a Tehelka report had come out, and that report had said that the CIA is involved, academics are involved, an entire fact gathering, huge data gathering effort was involved for this Joshua Project mission. So thousands and thousands of paid researchers in India, including Indians, are involved in all the data gathering and then on all the action plans. So it's like there is a war happening. There is a massive war happening. It's been happening for decades, where one side is mobilized for the war. They have war strategies. They have soldiers on the ground. They are attacking every day. And the other side does not even know the war exists. This is the state we are in right now. And even in fact, to talk about the fact that the war exists is supposed to be not right. We are not even supposed to know that this war exists. This is somehow communal to say that this is a war going on, even though the facts are out there. Anybody can go to the Joshua Project website and see this. So this is not something we are making up. And I've gotten some quotes, and I actually originally wrote this article, I think in 2003 or 4. It's called the Freedom of Religion article. So even for 15 years, we have been talking about it, but the level of awareness in Indian society is very, very low. And so this was the quote. Some of these quotes and stats are from my article from 15 years ago. And so this is the approach, and it's very important to understand the approach. So they're talking about the Sonar people here in the project website. And there's the Sonar people of Maharashtra are the primary crafters of gold and silver Hindu idols. These idols are the most powerful stronghold that Satan has upon Hindu worshippers in India and around the world, because all these idol worship is satanic. So, and the idea is to go and target that community. We say if we turn the Sonars into Christians, then if they embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ, we will see the collapse of Hinduism. So this is the kind of thinking that drives it. They're saying that it's a war path, and we need to see the collapse of Hinduism. We need to eradicate it, and that is the only way forward.
Is this line, the bottom line, is it written in the Joshua project?
This I have a reference in my article on my website. I don't know if it is from the Joshua Project or the Southern Baptist site. So the reference is there in the article. Yeah, I've noticed in recent times they have cleaned it up a little bit, so the older quote might not be still available because they're trying to make it a little more palatable. But this is the basic crux of the matter. And India has the largest number of target groups in Joshua Project. They have something called the 1040 window. What is the 1040 window? Is the window between 10-degree north latitude and 40-degree north latitude. This is the 1040 window, which has the most number of unconverted people. Out of those, if you look at it, a lot of those are Islamic countries which do not actually allow the proselytization to happen. So India is the number one biggest target and the most easy target of the conversion war, right? And so they have the kind of detail they have, 102,480 Bhotia people in Sikkim, 47,000 Sherpas, 162,000 Tibetan Buddhists, 165,200 Banya Jains, 3.4 million Auroras. So they've like gone and done like very, very detailed, and then it's on every village level. Every village level they've done how many of which community are there, how do you target them, how do you talk to a Jain versus how do you talk to a Sikh person. All of that is in very, very detail. They have strategized it, and they've strategized it over decades. In fact, there is an entire field of theology which is mission studies, right? So they have entire colleges of professors, researchers, academicians that are looking at research on how do you convert somebody, missionology, what is the Christology, missionology, what are all the strategies to deploy. In India also there are colleges, entire colleges that train missionaries, right, on conversion. So all the way down to tribal Mongpa 850 people, or they're the Banjaras they're targeting, all this. And I look at, I looked at their targeting of Banjaras, and there was something really sad feeling that came, because it's such a rich wealth of tradition, of custom, and once you say, you have to leave all that and only Jesus is valid, the whole thing starts to shift. You cannot have the same kind of devotion, you cannot have the same kind of music, you cannot have the same kind of dance. All of that gets destroyed. So it's not just saying, oh, you accept one God, take another God, but it's an entire ecosystem that gets destroyed as part of that conversion. It's also important to realize that the maximum conversion has happened over the last 50 years, for instance in Africa, after the colonization ended. Even in India, more conversion has happened after independence than happened before independence. Most of the Naga people were also converted after independence. Northeast, all of the Northeast is converted after independence. Now there's a huge effort in the South, there's a huge effort in Punjab.
Is there a collaboration of the political party power?
Well, I think both things have happened. In fact, there were commissions that were set up under the Congress. Indira Gandhi was also opposing some of this thing because she was...
I remember one thing that Dr. Brahmano Roya used to oppose
Yeah.
missionary who was allowed, or he was the only one who was allowed to do all these things in North.
Yes. No, so there is definitely a collaboration, because the way when you have, this is like in fact 2000, figures from over a decade ago, $50 billion is poured into missionary activity every year. If you look at the scale of that money, right, you can see that every level of society can be corrupted. The media is obviously completely sold out, right? So it's very difficult to find this in media, right? A lot of the bureaucrats are with them. A lot of the politicians have also been co-opted, right? In India, you co-opt them very simply by saying this is secular. So right-wing Christianity becomes secular, and opposing right-wing Christianity becomes communal. It's the strangest thing in the world. So talking about the fact that this is, And one of the reasons why I started taking this up, and in some senses, you could say there is no need for me to speak about this, and why bring this up at all, and how does it matter, is that I had grown up in a very plural notion of Indian society. And I think that is one of our strengths, because the exclusive religion world over is in conflict. There is huge conflict that is happening, and India actually is one of the solutions to the conflict. But when you bring in exclusive religion and when you convert people to exclusive religion, that conflict is going to increase, right? So all conversion is a conversion from pluralism to exclusivism. All conversion is a conversion from acceptance to dogma, right? And in fact, some of the missionary websites say that. They said that the biggest problem in India is that they accept Jesus very easily. The biggest problem in India is they're saying कि ठीक है, हमारा राम है, कृष्ण है, जीसस को भी साथ रख दो, क्या परेशानी है ना? जीसस को भी पूज लेंगे. This is the problem. The problem is that the conversion can only happen if you spit on Ram. It cannot happen just by accepting Jesus. It can only happen once you throw away your murti, once you destroy it. Only then the conversion can happen. So the conversion is a conversion into dogma, into hate, into exclusive ideology that militates against the plural society. Right? So this is the most important thing to understand. So this is the reason why I started talking about this, because of a commitment to plural society, because of saying that the Indian way in which we respect each other's traditions is the way forward for the world, because the path of exclusive religion has only brought conflict and is going to continue to bring conflict, right? And this is the story from Africa. So over the last 50 years, Africa got converted. If you look at an Africa map and see a religious demographic map, it's very interesting. The north, there is this Islamic conversion. From the south, there is the Christian conversion. And in the middle, there are all these countries of conflict like Nigeria and all these countries where, Boko Haram was there, and Boko Haram was an Islamic terror group that kidnapped these girls who were studying in a Christian school. All this. So you see from top Islam exclusivism is there, from bottom Christian exclusivism is there, and all of the middle is the huge conflict zone that is happening, right? And a lot of the conversion happened in the last 50 years. So this African scholar Macaw Mutua says, it's very strange that the human rights regime facilitates this conversion war. Now we go back to this notion of what is freedom of religion, right? The human rights regime says that missionaries coming to convert you, that is freedom of religion. Your ability to say no to them is a denial of freedom of religion. This is the crux of the problem. This is the crux of the problem. Freedom of religion has been defined by the aggressors rather than the native people. So this guy says the human rights regime incorrectly assumes a level playing field by requiring that African religions compete in the marketplace of ideas. Remember, the proselytizing view is that religion is a competitive marketplace of ideas. So then just like we are converting, you can come convert us, right? So, but the fact is that is not true. How many missions are Nagas sending to America to convert them to Nagaism? They're not, because it doesn't make sense to them. It's nonsense. So that's the asymmetry of doctrine. So the rights corpus not only forcibly imposes on African religions the obligation to compete, a task for which as non-proselytizing, non-competitive creeds, they are not historically fashioned, but also protects the evangelizing religions in their march towards universalization. It seems inconceivable that the human rights regime would have intended to protect the right of certain religions to destroy others. So this is the central problem. The central problem is that are the Banjaras resourced enough to fight the evangelism war, right? They are a community, they are following their traditions, they are doing their dance, they are doing their music. They have not sent people to study what are the missionaries doing. They have not sent people to America to research the structure of Christianity. But the other side has done that. The other side is sent people, they've sent researchers, they've studied them, they've figured out what their weak spots are, figured out what the conflict is, and one of the best ways for evangelism is you create conflict within the group. So this is the fault line, right? This is where the Breaking India story also comes in, because you exacerbate the fault lines, you deepen the fault lines. So when the conflict arises and then you say, oh, you're being oppressed, you make somebody the oppressor, you make somebody the oppressed, and then you can, that way you can say, no, your traditions are actually oppressive. And the way to save you is to reject these traditions and go forward. So all of that narrative comes to serve the conversion war. This is the main reason for the narrative. In fact, one of the whole feminist narrative is also part of that. I had tweeted that, one of the biggest NGOs, so-called women's rights NGOs, Ranjana Kumari runs, is completely funded by church groups coming from Europe. Interchurch Collective and other people are funding it. And she is the biggest person who's arguing for women's right to pray at Sabarimala. Now, no, it's very strange. Why would the church that regards Sabarimala as satanic, that regards Murti Puja as satanic, be funding somebody for a right to pray at that satanic place? Right? So, because the point is not about right to pray at all. The idea is to attack the tradition so that the faith of the common people in that tradition gets broken. Right? And so you use all these different pretexts. You use women rights somewhere, you use animal rights somewhere, you use child rights somewhere. You use all this structure, but the aim is to create this barrier. And one of the things they also identified was one of the reasons why the church started funding feminist movements. Imagine the feminist movement is of course in conflict with the church. It came across, in the West, it came across as the biggest critic of the church was coming from the feminist movement. I mean, the Catholic Church was literally burning witches that they called strong women in the community, medicine women. They killed hundreds and thousands of women in Europe who were strong, spiritually rooted midwives and other women, healing women. So that church is now coming and funding feminist movement. What is the story behind it? One of the things that they realized was that the women are actually central to the propagation of Hindu traditions. The Hindu traditions are actually carried by the women. And so they figured that if they attack the Hindu traditions as anti-women, as that, then if you could take the women against that tradition, then the conversion war becomes much easier. So this is again part of the strategy, very, very well thought out strategy, and that is why they are funding these so-called rights group in India. So the second asymmetry is the asymmetry of resources. One is the asymmetry of doctrine, and the other is the asymmetry of resources. So this is again 2005, older figures, but that just one mission board, the budget was over 2,000 crores, and 21,000 churches had been planted at that time, 2005, across the globe. 1 year revenue of institutionalized Christianity, again this is 2001 figures, is $260 billion. Okay, again this is bigger than any multinational on the planet. So this is the kind of resources that are deployed. And on top of that, the strangest thing is, for instance, President Bush passed a law where now the US government's separation of church and state did not allow church groups to be directly funded by the government. But Bush passed a law where faith-based initiatives could be funded. And in 2004 alone, $2 billion were given by the US government directly to Christian organizations. Now the strange thing is, in India, which is the only really significant Hindu state in the world, the government even takes over the temple wealth of the Hindus. So let alone give money to fund Hindu organizations, it is taking away the temple, even the collection that happens in the temple, the government takes away, because the government controls temple. Whereas there are dozens and dozens of Christian countries in which the state actively is funding Christian organizations. So secularism is taught to us again as a part to disarm us, right, or to render us unable to compete. And the secularism is very strange. The secularism is one that robs Hindu temples, It doesn't say it's a separation of church and state, let the Hindus run their own institutions, which is one other factor in the Hindu charter. And then, and actually, in fact, the Indian state funds, Indian state has a scheme where, if you are a Muslim or a Christian, you get scholarships from the government of India as minority scholarships, where you get scholarships to even study abroad, right? So the state is funding the same religions that are actively being funded all over the globe. The Indian state is also funding the same forces and taking away resources from the Hindus. The other asymmetry is, can one say no? So for instance, let us say there is a small village and they saw their neighboring village and they saw some missionaries came into the neighboring village and they observed that it was not good for that society. Some conflict happened between the groups after those missionaries came. So that village says that we are not going to allow missionaries. So the village passes their panchayat passes a decision that we are not going to allow missionaries. As soon as they do that, the entire human rights regime is going to come and jump on them, right? And they are going to say, no, this is a violation of human rights. How can you stop missionaries? There is no violation of human rights when you come and plant a church, you create conflict between communities, you break away people from the tradition. There is no violation of human rights. But if you say no, don't do this, then it's a violation of human rights, right? So that, and that is not just a figurative thing, it actually has enforced. For instance, when Sri Lanka was trying to pass a legislation to restrict missionary activity, the US Secretary of State contacts the Sri Lankan ambassador and saying, we consider this a violation of freedom of religion and trade is going to be affected if you do this, right? So there is a huge power structure which is backing it. It is not just happening because one missionary is coming. The missionary has media narratives, it's got resources, it's got billions of dollars behind it, and it has state power which is backing it. In fact, the entire so-called United States Commission for International Religious Freedom, USCIRF, creates all these country reports, but the main aim is to continue unhindered access to the missionaries in the different countries. Now there is this other thing called Project Thessalonica. How many people know about Project Thessalonica? Okay, only very few. So just do a Google search. One of the top hits is an article I wrote for India Facts on Project Thessalonica. So what Project Thessalonica, so the Project Joshua is a overt effort, right? So that is very public. Anybody can go look at it, Joshua Project. Project Thessalonica is a covert effort. So Project Thessalonica is saying that we need to have strategic intervention as a war tactic. If you convert certain people, then our mission will succeed better. So this is a quote from there. So it aims to stop or limit Hindu activity by converting people who form the pillars of Hindu culture, to also to stop Hindu festivals from happening, and different traditions and activities. And this comes from the Greece city of Thessaloniki. When Christianity was being imposed on Greece, the Olympic Games used to happen at that time, the ancient Olympics. And the ancient Olympics, they paid respect to the Greek gods, the Greek deities. And this was considered to be a threat to Christianity. So at that time, all of this was banned and all of that was wiped out, and the games were also stopped at that time. And because the popular festival created faith and created connection from the ordinary people, even when there was a game happening, that was a problem for the church. So all the attack on festival traditions comes from Project Thessalonica. And what they're saying is specific churches are funding. For instance, the Baptist Church of Nashville adopted towns where the annual Kumbh Mela takes place, has been converting locals so visitors face extreme hardship during their next visit. Another mission group is adopting boatmen of Kashi, so that the boatmen are being trained in other fields, so they abandon their profession. Right? So it's very strategically they are looking at what are the rituals that are followed, how can we attack and make an intervention so that some of the routes are cut off, and so those activities will not be able to be happening, right? And then and what they're saying is use different tactics. So in some cases the environmental group will protest, right? If you start to trace the funding of the environmental group, you will see it is all coming from this nexus, right? But the environmental group will protest against Ganesh Chaturthi, will protest against Shri doing this event in Delhi, right? So all of these, they're looking at, okay, something happens, this is going to create a relationship of the people to this thing, and so we need to figure out how to attack it. Then somewhere animal rights group will be activated, so Jallikattu becomes an animal rights issue. Somewhere women's rights groups is activated. So this is all very, very systematic. And because of the way the whole PIL system has been set up, where FCRA, NGOs, anybody with no skin in the game can arbitrarily file a PL and saying something is happening in Tamil Nadu, ban it, right? And the Supreme Court will also nicely oblige, right? So all of these things, making environmental groups raise, and this again, I've been writing this for 20 years, so it's not something happened, all of the things that we see happening are efforts that have been going on for 20 plus years. We are just seeing we just say, oh, we get upset because one thing has happened, another thing has happened. We are like being completely reactive because we think it's all a local issue. And some Hindus will also argue, no, Jallikattu is very cruel to animals. Some other person will argue. So all this debate will take place as if this is actually a debate on the issue, but it's not a debate on the issue at all. The main aim is, these are popular traditions, and if you kill the popular tradition, even this Sani Sangram, what is that temple in? That temple, after the restrictions were lifted, the faith of the local people dilutes. So less people start coming. Same thing, in the Sambarimala thing, the collections have gone down so much, right? So the idea the main idea is to kill it, right? But the excuse is, no, it's about women's rights, it's about this, about that. But the goal is to kill it. And so they've also, it's important, over the past 20 years, missionaries, again, this is from many years ago, missionaries also appear to have invested a lot in handling the political leadership, so much that their activities appear to be almost immune to the ruling political party. And we have seen this as well, right? So it does not matter if you change the political party, their activities continue unhindered. In fact, every political party comes and starts supporting it. So any group exposing their activity finds itself identified as a militant or extremist group in the news media. Again, not something I wrote up right now. This is a document that has existed for 15-20 years. Okay, so none of this is happening accidentally. So the Project Thessalonica and there's this anti-superstition bill that was in Maharashtra. It was passed by the Congress and in Karnataka also. So it's very interesting. What is superstition? Can somebody define superstition for me? What is superstition? Everybody uses this term. Somebody should be able to define it, no? Huh?
Tradition which doesn't have a logic.
Black magic?
Only
Logic. Black magic. But what has logic? Christianity has logic, right? So
this is defined as
yes. So if you say it doesn't have logic, then you can say Christianity is superstition, Islam is superstition, but the superstition bill makes sure that it excludes all those explicitly. So it is very clear that the anti-superstition bill excludes Islam, it excludes Christianity, so that it's very clear what the target should be. Okay, because otherwise if you use the rule of logic, then I can say all religions are superstition. The reason why we cannot define superstition is superstition is a Christian theological term. It is not a secular term. People think the superstition word means something. It doesn't mean a single thing. It only makes sense in the context of Christian theology. And in the context of Christian theology, you can look at the Catholic Encyclopedia, it defines it very clearly. What is superstition? Superstition is worship of the false god or improper worship of the true god. This is what superstition is. So improper worship means worship which is not authorized by the church. That is what superstition is. So superstition is a Christian theological term. You create an anti-superstition law its only aim is to eradicate native traditions. Because all our native traditions are superstition per the Christian theological point of view. Right? So, and very happily our political parties go and they pass these laws. And the very interesting thing is to not fall into this debate. So, there you can debate, oh, is this Jallikattu good? Is this happening, not happening? Though all those debates are part of the strategy. Something that has been going on for centuries, you suddenly make a debate on it, you raise a question on it. So, the first thing that we are asking, and I'll talk about in the Freedom of Religion Act that we are proposing, let's actually go to the act. So, this is kind of the problem statement. So, I'll do a quick summary. What is the problem statement? There are two different views of what religious freedom is, right? Two different views of what religious freedom is. For one side, it is the ability to proselytize and convert other people, right? For the other side, it is the ability to follow my traditions without interference. Okay, so now the problem is, if India is a secular state, secularism has this notion of neutrality. Now there can be no neutrality between these 2 points of view. Either the Indian state says religious freedom is defined by the first principle, or the Indian state says religious freedom is defined by the second principle, because these 2 principles are in conflict. Which one has the Indian state chosen?
It hasn't chosen anything.
No, it has. It has chosen the first one. It has saying religion, the ability to propagate religion, all this is in the constitution. It has explicitly chosen the first one. It has in fact no protection for the second one. So it has explicitly chosen the first one, which means as soon as it chooses it, it's clearly not a secular state. If secularism is meant to be neutral between those 2 points of view, firstly it is not possible to be neutral, and secondly between these 2 choices it is choosing the choice that is coming from the Christian paradigm, right? So the secular state is a Christian state. The secular state is a Christian state. Every aspect of the secular state is a derivative of Christianity. It is secularized. So we've taken the notion of freedom of religion which comes from Christianity and we've secularized and it appears neutral. अरे तुमको वो convert कर रहे हैं, तुम भी convert कर लो, problem क्या है? It appears very neutral, right? But why is it not neutral? Because of all the asymmetries, right? It is not neutral because one side is saying this is their God-given mission, they have to do it. The other side is saying, अरे क्या फर्क पड़ता है, तुम अपना follow कर लो, हम अपना follow कर लेते हैं, right? Yeah, so that is what I'm saying. So it is inherently not neutral, and that is coming from one notion, and so the Indian state has to choose, and the choice that Indian state has made consistently is choosing the sort of secularized European, which is Christian point of view. I mean, I can give loads of examples. A very trivial example is, why does the secular state follow the Christian calendar? Why does the secular state, it doesn't follow the Indian traditional calendar? Why does the secular state have a holiday on Sunday? The holiday on Sunday is coming directly from the church. It's coming from Sabbath, right? These are all theological ideas. We have assumed this is secular. So the secularization of Christian European culture, so if we say holiday on Tuesday, it would be communal. Holiday on Sunday is secular. So Christianity is secular and the native traditions are communal, right? So this is kind of what happens when you haven't looked at the sort of the neutrality of secularism. It doesn't exist. There is no neutral point of view. Either the Indian state has to be based on Indian traditions or it's going to be based on Christian traditions. There is no middle ground. And so so this is what the Freedom of Religion Act is asking. One is prohibition of institutional conversion, right? So we are not saying anybody can decide to worship who they want, go and pray where they want. We are not restricting anybody's individual freedom. But we are noticing that this whole conversion war that is funded by institutions, there is sales quotas. Salesforce has been given quotas. If you convert somebody, you get 1 lakh rupee benefit. right? You have this, how many are you going to convert in this week, in this month, right? So it's an entire sales force that has been deployed. So this causes conflict in society. So we need to ban institutional conversion. This is not something that is helpful to our society. No direct or indirect compensation. So we are saying we don't want, no person shall receive any monetary benefit for converting others. See, so far the anti-conversion acts have only been for the particular person, like you shall not convert somebody through allurement. Actually, even that is a theological idea. That you shall not convert somebody through allurement is a theological idea, because the theology says there must be a true acceptance of Jesus, only then the conversion should take place. So that theological idea is in the anti-conversion law also. Right? Because the true conversion has not taken place because you've used allurement, right? Therefore, it should be banned. So anti-conversion law is also coming from the same theology. So rather than that, we have to study the other side, and we have to look at the institutional mechanisms that are supporting it. And then we have to say the institutional mechanism for conversion needs to be regulated, right? And that is, and then this whole sales force for conversion needs to be disbanded, because anybody can change their religion, anybody can do it, but nobody shall receive monetary benefits for converting other people, right? So this takes the whole sales force away. So this is another proposal. No solicitation of minors. This is very important. One of the biggest ways the missionaries they target schools, right? They target schools, that are going to government schools, they're going to private schools, they're targeting young children, because the best time to implant absurd doctrines is when somebody is a child, right? You plant these doctrines and then you keep repeating it, and by the time the child is grown up, they have lost the ability to question it, right? So they specifically target minors. But if minors are not able to give informed consent for sexual activity, for instance, why are they able to give informed consent for conversion activity? Are they able to study the theology? Are they able to refute the theology? They are not able to do it. So that means no solicitation of minors should be allowed. No activities aimed at subtle or direct conversion of minors should be allowed. And the passing on of traditions from one generation to the next without interference is a fundamental right. So here now we have finally defined a fundamental right which is based on the native traditions all across the world rather than on the two proselytizing religions, right? So we are saying passing on of traditions from one generation to the next without interference is a fundamental right. So the Indian constitution again is not based on the native view of things, it is based on the Abrahamic and Christian views of things. No unsolicited marketing of religious conversion. Right now there are laws against spam. We are saying you cannot spam me on my text messages, you cannot spam me on email. Why is religious spam a protected activity? I never asked for Jesus. Why are you coming shoving Jesus down my throat? If I want Jesus, I can find him on the internet. Lot of searching is there. Google Anand Swami, Google Anand will provide Jesus if I need Jesus, right? So unsolicited marketing, right? And also you should not be able to go and plant a church in a place where there are no Christians. What is the meaning of planting a church there? Unsolicited. The community is not asking for it, right? You are going and you are intruding into that community and you are planting something. So right to propagate religions is intended for individuals to share their faith with people they know who express interest, not for unsolicited marketing, opt-in marketing. We need to regulate it using opt-in marketing. There should only be opt-in marketing. Okay? If I am greatly desirous of Jesus, I will say, come tell me. You don't need to come and push it down my throat. And this one is the right to practice. This is taking on all the, because as I said, none of the rights so far have been defined from the native point of view. Right? In fact, we are defining laws like anti-superstition law and all that. These are meant to curb the indigenous and native traditions. So we are saying every community will have the right to practice their traditions without interference from the state, including the courts, from other people or communities asking them to change their religion. The state shall follow the bar of rarest of rare in interfering with traditional practices and advocates self-regulation over state regulation, right? So the Supreme Court has no business saying how much should be the height of Dahi Handi. The honorable justices in the somebody files a PIL, again the people who are actually doing the Dahi Handi are not even involved. Some third party files a PIL, the people who are doing it are not even represented, the court gives a judgment and somebody who is following their tradition is banned, right? The honorable justice says, we are very scared of the height. If you are scared of the height, Mr. Justice, don't climb it. Stay in your chamber. Why is it that somebody is saying they are scared of the height and they're doing, again, if you go to Barcelona in Spain, they have this immense pyramid building which is celebrated as their culture, right? I went there, I saw these human pyramids, and the human pyramid team in Barcelona came to India to study the Dahi Handi groups to see how they do these remarkable pyramids, right? And now it is restricted and banned, so it is now killed as a sport basically. You can only do it at a certain height, which means that the whole point was this competitive pyramid building. If you restrict the height, all of that is gone, right? So there is no reason for the state to interfere. The state, if there is a safety issue, the state says, why don't you guys look at safety? You promote safety, right?
Why should safety be even promoted?
No, and the people whose children are climbing, they are the ones who should be worried. They are not the ones who are filing the PIL. The PIL is filing by some FCRA NGO, which has probably not even gone and seen the Handi.
Is there a law which permits Supreme Court to interfere?
No, so the problem is that the Bill of Rights is itself being used as an attack for native traditions. So they have weaponized the Bill of Rights. They weaponized, right to, equality for Sabarimala. They weaponized, something, and the PIL system is completely arbitrary. Like you can go directly to the Supreme Court, which is self-absurd. The Supreme Court should be an appellate court. There should be a process by something lands in the Supreme Court. You can directly get the Supreme Court to rule, and this is the highest court of the land, it's done, right? So this itself, the whole PIL system, and especially FCRA, NGO funded PIL system is a problem. And finally, nationalization of religious institutions. This is something that China has done, where right now the church, for instance, is the biggest landowner in India, right? And the orders for all of that is coming from the Vatican, which is a foreign power which controls all these institutions and all this land. So no religious institution in India that owns real property shall have a subsidiary relationship, either formal, informal or ecclesiastical, with a foreign religious entity. Control of land and institutions shall be fully vested in the Indian authority without any formal or informal foreign ecclesiastical authority exercising control. Right? This is the kind of thing that China has done, for instance, to nationalize the church. They are saying, why should the bishop be appointed by some foreign power? The bishop should be appointed by somebody sitting in India, right? Right now you cannot even fire a priest, even on somebody who's molested some child. You cannot fire the Catholic priest unless the order comes from the Vatican.
You can relocate the nurses.
Yeah. And nuns, you can make sure that they don't complain too much. Yeah, they cannot complain too much. So again, the issue is not about some specific institution, but the very fact that the foreign institution exercises so much control, and it is some of that land was given from colonial times. In fact, even the leases have expired, so nobody has really taken up that issue. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the Freedom of Native Traditions Act of the Hindu Charter. And again, the most important thing is to raise awareness among people. People don't even know, right? And this article I had written in 2004 or something, so it's already 14 years, but the level of awareness of people is still very, very low. So the main thing, and the political parties also don't know, the people who are ruling don't know, they have not studied it. So we need to study it, and we need to let people know, share the talk, share the articles, right? So you can follow me on Twitter at Sankrant, and the article is on sankrant.org. I think it's called The Conversion War and Religious Freedom. This was the original article I'd written many years ago. Okay, so thank you very much. Namaskar.